It's deadline day for media outlets to sign the Pentagon's new restrictive press access rules. It states that reporters cannot solicit or report on any information the Department of Defense does not authorize. News organizations across the board, including CNN, as you might imagine, rejected signing a pledge like that. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called Pentagon press access a, quote, privilege, not a right, and responded to outlets who aren't signing it with a single waving hand emoji. Joining me now, CNN chief media analyst Brian Stelter. Brian, what should outlets expect today? Obviously, especially those who are saying we're not signing this because you are basically telling us what we can and cannot report on or say.
Yeah, this was originally described a number of weeks ago as a pledge. There were some revisions after negotiations with media outlets, but newsroom leaders and media lawyers looked at this document from the Pentagon and said this was simply unacceptable. It's an infringement on First Amendment rights. It has the potential to criminalize acts of journalism because so much of what reporters learn about the military, some of it comes from leaks. Some of it comes from sources who are not technically authorized or allowed to provide the information, but they're sharing that information in the public interest. This new document, this new so-called pledge, would potentially criminalize that kind of coverage and put journalists at risk of prosecution. So that is why so many news outlets are standing up and saying they will not sign the papers today. The Pentagon issued a 5 p.m. Eastern Time deadline today, and they say any journalist who has a press pass for the Pentagon complex who does not sign the new paperwork, they'll have to turn in their press pass by 5 p.m. tomorrow, meaning 5 p.m. Wednesday. This means that essentially all of the beat reporters who currently have the ability to enter the Pentagon complex, to go up and speak with spokespeople in person, to attend press conferences if they're ever held, that those people will lose their access. They'll have to turn in their press passes. But it is remarkable, Sarah, the show of solidarity that we are seeing. Dozens of media outlets at this point all agreeing they're not going to sign this paperwork. They're not going to go along with these restrictions. They are going to choose to hand in those press passes instead.
I'm curious about, when you look at this board here that shows you all of the different organizations, one that stands out there is Newsmax, which has been very pro-Trump. What are the right-leaning publications doing in all of this?
It's one of the most important details here. Newsmax has said it is not going to sign this pledge. It wants some sort of resolution, but it's not going to sign the pledge as it stands now. And I'm told Fox News is taking the same stand, and Fox, along with the major broadcast networks, is going to come out later today and say it's not willing to sign along and play along with these rules either. CNN, of course, this network already said last week that it wasn't going to go along with these rules. Let me show you first CNN statement saying CNN's mission to report on fully and fairly about the U.S. military and the Trump administration will continue regardless of physical access to the Pentagon. We will not be deflected from our duty to hold all three fairly and fully to account, and will continue to report on the actions and decision-making processes of the U.S. government without fear or favor. Newsmax in a statement saying much the same thing. So it is telling, we're seeing some of these pro-Trump or conservative outlets say that they will not sign the pledge. At the same time, major mainstream outlets like the AP, CNN, Reuters, the Wall Street Journal, they are all rejecting this edict from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
What legal action are you thinking that these organizations, as they're looking at all of this, might take?
Well, that's the next possibility. Yeah, that's the next possibility because this deadline is today. The press passes have to be handed back on Wednesday. We may see legal action by news outlets down the road. But one thing is clear. News outlets like CNN are going to keep covering the Pentagon even if we're not allowed inside the building.
Yeah, and covering it because also the press is doing this to inform the public. The public pays the taxes for the Pentagon to exist. Lots of complication there. Thank you so much, Brian Stelter, for being here with us early this morning.
Today marks the deadline to sign onto the Pentagon's new restrictive press access rules. If the pledge is not signed, reporters must surrender their press passes by tomorrow. So news organizations have broadly rejected signing this new pledge, I want to say, including CNN and notably MAGA network Newsmax. They say the new rules say reporters cannot solicit or report on any information that the Defense Department does not authorize. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called Pentagon press access, quote, a privilege, not a right. And to all the outlets who aren't signing on, Hegseth's response was simple, a waving goodbye emoji. The group chat is back. I want to talk to our reporter first. We know this happened with the White House Press Association in terms of the White House sort of saying, listen, we want to weigh in on X and Y. These are our decisions. In those cases, the Press Association sort of had less they could do to fight back. Why do you think news organizations drew a line here?
I think with this situation with the Pentagon, there's real concerns about the language in this agreement that the Pentagon is trying to have reporters sign that basically calls for them for reporters to acknowledge that if they ask for any information that was not pre-approved for release, that they may be committing a crime, that it's soliciting a crime to reveal even unclassified information.
Right, so even if you find out secret things, you got to come to us. If you just, I don't know, get accidentally sent a text and added to a group chat, you can't report that either.
How do you know if the question you're asking has been pre-approved for release? That's
Right.
not a thing that is communicated to reporters.
Why do you think it's significant that the news organization said no?
Well, I also think Fox is saying no, too. So
Yeah,
there's not
that's why
going to
I'm
be very
bringing it
many
up.
people there. But I think this goes back to the lawyers. You're right. I mean, the criminal charge, if you leak this or if you report on this information is I think the sticking point. I mean, you would know better than me, but it is unprecedented.
Yeah.
know
Also,
a lot
every
about lawyers.
major, I feel like, news story of the last 100 years came from defense reporters reporting on wars, covert operations. Like, this is kind of the heart of what we do.
Let's build off of that point, which is there's more money spent in that building around our defense than all of our government combined, I believe. Don't hold me to that number, but a ton of stuff. So the press is there literally, whether it's the right or the left or the middle, I don't care, but this is where most of our money is. This is the defense of our country. This is where reporting may be the most important because there's just so many resources. That means you have folks talking about, I remember the golden toilet seats over at the Pentagon, or some spy thing, or some bomb thing, like all the things that are titillating to newspapers, but also news that we need. This is the last place we should be coddling that down.
If they're not classified.
If they're not classified. And also, I think at one point when the Supreme Court was weighing in on some of these issues, there was mentioned in the ruling that our sons and daughters go to war, and we have a say and a right to know the how and why that happens.
There are a lot of leaks there, and I'm not just saying with Hegseth. There's been a lot of leaks over the years. I think it's just the wrong way to maybe thread this needle. There probably needs to be a little bit of a reform in regards to how things are reported, especially classified information, secret, top secret, especially secrets, the stuff that usually gets leaked because they don't realize. But I do think that it's, a little bit step too
Well, here's a
far.
news story that didn't need leaking because it's about viral video. The Pentagon chief, Pete Hegseth, also claims that, quote, standards are back. And so he shared this article on X, which had included some reporting that some Texas National Guard troops were replaced. It is Texas, Chuck, sorry. Who were headed to Illinois. They were replaced for not meeting certain fitness standards, including height, weight, physical fitness. And that's according to the Texas Military Department. So this fits with Hegseth's kind of speech before the military, where he spoke before all these generals, and he was saying, look, having generals who are fat is a bad look for the military. And I wanted to bring this back to you guys because some of the commentary, the reason why this went viral in a way is because people were mocking the National Guard, Texan National Guards, for being in Illinois. And so it actually didn't start out as general complaint by Hegseth. I want to show you one of them where it says Hegseth is going to lose his mind. Texas National Guard arrives in Chicago for food, I assume, with a picture of these National Guardsmen. I want to get your opinion on this because people used to mock the National Guard pre 9/11 as weekend warriors. That war changed how these folks were seen.
Go. I want you to talk about this first because you're dying.
Lots of folks in the National Guard have done amazing work coming up. And I get what he's saying about folks being a little overweight. I just got back from Texas. I think I gained 5 pounds over the weekend from Mexican food and Whataburger. Like, I get it. And these folks aren't full-time military, but I think you got to be able to kind of do both here. There should be some standards that are met, but then also these guys have regular jobs Monday through Friday, probably eating Mama's cooking.
Which they can't go to because they're busy not getting paid, going to other cities.
Well, that is true, but I think they are getting paid as of tomorrow. They're supposed to be fine money. But no, you're right. The National Guard, we should all be well, first of all, we should thank all of our military, but we should definitely thank our National Guard.
Are we going to push up our way through improved Defense Department? Like, what's with the shaming, frankly, of most of the people who serve our country?
Right. I mean, nobody wants to be called out like that on the internet for your body. That's horrible. We'll set that aside.
And then confirmed by your boss.
And then fired or removed from duty for it. But setting that aside, there have been long-time discussions within the Pentagon about military readiness standards. There was some relaxing, I think, of the Navy standards around 2016.
Yes, when retention was bad. But
Right.
now they're recruiting like crazy. They actually have plenty of numbers.
And this is also something that, Trump has made a priority, President Trump, that he wants people to look the part. The projection of strength and power is a key part of how he wants his White House, his administration, his military to look. He always will talk about how somebody looks like they're from central casting. You need to look like you're there to do the job. So those images, I mean, you could see that it wasn't just the Secretary of Defense, that the President as well probably was not a fan of seeing troops look like that.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.